Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. It is the week of the Bad Batch Season 3, just 2 days to go, but today we have something very different on the roster. Before we dive into it though my dear friends, if you've not done so already, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down below, and why not hit the bell to be alerted every time that I post a new video. But no more jibber jabber, let's begin. Cameron Monaghan recently spoke at Fan Expo 2024, and was asked about if he wants to reprise the role of Kestis, but this time in a live-action Disney Plus show, instead of it just being the Jedi games. Now I've always said, if Kestis is going to come into live action, they're going to wait for the third and final Jedi game in the series to release. I don't think they're going to do anything with this story until we get that third game. Now this is a subject we've spoken about in depth before, and honestly, my thoughts on the issue have kind of changed. Now that we know there are going to be 2 Star Wars Mandalorian films, one by Jon Favreau, which is The Mandalorian and Grogu, and then Dave Filoni's movie after Ahsoka Season 2, I think there's a good chance if he does come into live action, it's going to be for one of those, on the big screen. Now something quite interesting from journalists and Star Wars fans who've asked him this question repeatedly, is that there is this kind of assumption that Kestis coming into live action is some kind of upgrade. But I think a lot of people underestimate just how popular the Jedi games are. Fallen Order, and then Survivor were immensely popular. While there will be some fans who've never played those games and the character will be new to them, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably the vast majority of fans who are watching the Disney Plus shows are at least familiar with the character. So I don't think it's a question of familiarity, although that will be the case for some. But this idea that it's this massive upgrade, I'm not too sure. Some would say it could be a downgrade, with how popular the games were. But I think inevitably he will come into live action at some point. But Cameron Monaghan had some very interesting comments, and I'm inclined to agree with him. The star of the Jedi series of games said this when asked if he'd be interested in coming into live action. It would have to be right. By that I mean, it has to continue the story or the character in some way. I don't want him to kind of just show up, just to stand around and be there. I want him to mean something and for there to be a significance for the character itself. So it'd have to make sense, but in the right context, yes. And he's absolutely spot on. You can't just bring in a character like Kestis, much further down the timeline, just for him to be a cameo, or a random character who doesn't have a point in the story. But considering the Mandoverse does have quite a few Jedi now, with Luke, Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, to an extent I suppose you could consider Grogu a Force sensitive, so in some ways there is more impetus for him to come into the show. But it would have to be the right context and the right timing. And as I said, this is far from the first time the actor's been approached as to the idea of making the jump outside the games. He said he had an interest, but that's as far as it went. He would not confirm or deny if there was any talks. Some think that the Obi-Wan Kenobi project was a missed opportunity, and I agree. With the hidden path, with Fortress, Inquisitorius, and various other connections, I think that would have been the perfect place, but they didn't take that opportunity. If they don't want to commit to something as far as Mando, then maybe the Dark Times are the right place. Could it be the Bad Batch Season 3, the premiere of which is in just a couple of days' time? We'll have to wait and see, but the main reason I'm bringing up The Mandalorian as the biggest possibility is that Jon Favreau has addressed Kestis coming into the show, citing the fact that BD-72 in the Book of Boba Fett was absolutely an allusion to BD-1 from the Jedi games. This was back at Star Wars Celebration 2023. Jon Favreau was asked about the possibility of adapting the Mantis crew and Kestis for live action, and here's what he said. We did have our little robot in there, and one of the things I'm most proud of is putting different sets of characters and storylines and multi-generations of characters into the show. He wouldn't give a certain yes or a no, but considering the appearance of BD-72 being a conscious decision and inclusion for the Book of Boba Fett, I would presume, at the very least, it's on his radar. Returning to Cameron Monaghan, he said this: "It's been really amazing doing the video games, because I think games are vastly underexplored and underutilized, and are only really getting their due in this moment. People are looking at games and seeing they're incredible and moving and significant. So my priority right now is to make sure we have a satisfying arc within the games. What happens or where Star Wars wants to go from there is anybody's guess. But I can say, I love the character Kestis, and it's been a joy finding him over the last few years. So we'll see. Hopefully we will. A very encouraging update in my opinion. and I'm hoping Cameron does make the jump at some stage, but as he says, it's got to be the right time, the right context, and only after the third and final Jedi video game comes out. There is also the possibility of exploring his relationship with his master Jared Tapal in something like Tales of the Jedi Season 2, and considering there is all this talk at Lucasfilm with the next Star Wars show after the Bad Batch Season 3, which is going to involve Asajj Ventress, according to various teasers from the cast and crew, that could be another place they explore Cal Kestis. It doesn't have to be linear. They don't only have to explore his future, although that is what fans are most curious about. What was the completion of his journey? Is he going to survive the final game? Is he going to live into the Mando era, the sequel trilogy afterwards? Who knows? As he said, it's anyone's guess. And what seems to be interesting whenever Cameron Monaghan is asked these questions is he implies the Jedi games might not end the way we think. I don't think even he's certain if his character is going to live beyond them. Last year he said, quote, "I want to see what it looks like for Cal as he ages, and what a number of years of fighting in a desperate situation is going to look like for the character. How does that change his worldview? How does that change the way he's going to interact with people? How does this affect his decision making?" These were all questions we kicked around while we made the first and second games. So then to be able to explore a mature story with Cal Kestis, one I would say is more challenging and much darker. It's a wait and see kind of situation. We don't really have any info on the final game. Not yet. It's far too soon. But this year we do have a smuggler Star Wars game called Star Wars Outlaws, so I believe that is going to take centre stage for quite some time. The most recent estimate for the third Star Wars Jedi game that I've seen is 2027 at the earliest. And just to finish on a very interesting little factoid, before Tales of the Jedi Season 1 killed off one of my favourite Jedi, Jedi Master Yaddle, we had no official Disney canon confirmation she ever died, or where she went after Episode 1. It was only expanded universe stuff, and at the time, one of Cameron Monaghan's wishes is that Yaddle somehow survived Order 66, and that in a future game, both Cal and Yaddle, following her reference in the first game, could explore the galaxy together. Evidently that never happened. But with that said, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. Did you enjoy it? Let me know your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you want more videos that you can't find here on YouTube while supporting what I do, the link to my Patreon is down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.